Hi, everyone, and welcome to Walking in Authority with Heather Smith. Today is Testimony Thursday, and your guest is me. I figured this week that I would, have myself on the show and let everyone hear about me and the things that God has done in my life. So, I want to say thank you to those that are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and then to those that are listening on Spotify. I truly, truly appreciate you for being here every week and watching. Y'all are truly, truly amazing. So let's just start with
those that are listening.
just introducing myself. As y'all know, I am Heather Smith, the host of this show. I grew up in a very small town, not far from Houston, probably about probably about an hour north of Houston. My parents were married up until I was 15, and then they got divorced. I had a great childhood. My parents were amazing. They did the best they could with what they had, right? So I want to say that my I don't know, I can't actually remember the age. However, I do know that I was addicted to meth as a teenager. And that's kind of where the addiction started in my life. And I remember waking up to do it like as soon as I woke up, you know what I mean? And it just kind of carried on throughout my life. So at the age of, let me see, it was my 11th grade year, in high school. I was worried about like what my family was doing. I wanted to stay at home with my family. I didn't really care about going to school, which is really weird for me because I grew up loving school, like the sports, the drill team. I was a drill team captain, me and my sister were, and it was great. I loved it. And then it just became something that I didn't care for anymore. I was more worried about staying at home and smoking the weed and hanging out with other family members instead of going to school. So I quit my 11th grade year of high school. However, I had enough credits the next year to become a senior. So I became a senior, right? Well, 2 weeks into my senior year, I decided, I'm good. I don't want to go to school anymore. So I quit. And after I quit, it was probably about 6 months after I quit. It wasn't very long at all. Maybe it wasn't 6 months. The timeline is kind of iffy right there. However, I did quit my senior year. About 6 months after that is whenever I found out I was pregnant with Haley. And me and her dad were together for, I think it was like 5, 6 months. We hadn't been together really that long. And the crazy thing is, like, I remember being that 19-year-old that was like, I want a baby, Lord, give me a baby. And he did. And I got pregnant when I was 19 years old. Me and the dad had split up. And then after I had Haley, we got back together. Haley was premature. She was in the hospital for about a month or so. I didn't even get to hold her the first week. And that was really, really hard. Being a young mom and then not being able to hold your child for another week after you had her, it was really, really hard for me. I spent a lot of my time trying to figure it out. Like, I know a lot of moms can probably relate to that. All moms can probably relate to that, having to kind of figure it out as you go, because we definitely don't have the rule book, right? So being a young mom was hard for me. I was with their dad. However, there was just a lot of complications in our life, in our relationship. Whenever Haley was 2 years old, I ended up getting pregnant. And it wasn't very long. I don't know exactly. I couldn't have been maybe a month pregnant, maybe not even that long. And I ended up having a miscarriage. And it was really like, in that moment, I don't know if I was afraid to express my emotions, but in that moment, I don't remember shedding a tear. I don't remember shedding a tear that I had a miscarriage. And you are probably sitting there going, that's crazy. And it is crazy. But I didn't deal with that pain and that hurt in that moment. I just kind of brushed it under the rug and tried to deal with life at hand. Um, I was in a abusive relationship that lasted for many, many, many years, up until my kids were, I don't know, 6 and 2, I guess. And at that moment, I had came across a friend of mine who was like preparing to go into the military. And I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute, I could do that, right? Like I could go into the military. And I remember people saying, you, Heather, like you're going to go into the army? Yeah, like I'm going to do it. I can do this, right? And so I started the whole ASVAB thing, like in another state, because we had traveled out of state to go see some of his family. And then when we came back to Livingston, I had finished the process. I took the ASVAB and did everything I did to be able to ship out into the military. From the time that I started the process of joining the military, it took about 6 or 7 months. It was very, very fast. And so August the 27th of 2007 is whenever I left for the military. I was so excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to go fight for my country. Like I was so excited and so pumped up. And then I remember going to South Carolina. First time I'd ever flew on an airplane. And I was so excited. So I get to South Carolina. I get off this bus because they have us all on this bus. I get off this bus. I'm at Fort Jackson. And as I'm getting off, I hear the drill sergeants like yelling at these people, like they're in their face, right? Just like yelling at them. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, Lord, Heather, what have you done? What have you done with your life? You have lost your mind. Why did you join the military? You're crazy. Like all these crazy thoughts started going through my head. Like I just made the biggest mistake in my life is what I was thinking. But I didn't realize that I had made the best decision of my life. They taught me so much being in the military, just how to stand up for myself, resiliency, brotherhood, sisterhood. Because I mean, I spent 4.5 years in the military. In 2009, I went to Iraq for a year. And I just gained so many friends, so many friends. They're brothers and sisters in arms, right? That's like the type of friendships and family that is just indescribable. Like there's just that connection that you just don't have with anybody else, especially being in Iraq with these women and men. Being able to trust somebody with your life, literally. Like none of us knew if we were going to make it home. You know, we were all spending a year of our life away from our family. It was hard. You know, that was whenever those sleepless nights started happening. I remember so many times I would be on, because I don't know if Yahoo still does or not, but then they had where you can have a phone number. And so my family would call me on this phone and we would sit there and video chat and talk to my kids through this, through the video chat. And I remember so many times that I would be talking to my kids or my mom or my stepdad, and I would literally just I had no time to say, hey, I got to go. I just had to take the things off of my head and I just had to go. I had to get out of there because I had to run like we were being bombed. And so it was very, very frightening. I didn't know if I was going to make it home. Thank God I did. Thank God I did make it home. It was, I don't even know. Sometimes I can't even find the words really to describe that. It was hard being away from my family that long. It was hard being away from my kids for that long. To hear my kids say, Mommy, I just want you to come home. And all I could tell them was, I'll be home as soon as I can. You know, Mama's got a few more months to go. I only seen my kids for 2 weeks during that time. The whole year that I was gone, I seen my kids for 2 weeks. It was hard for me. I can't even imagine how hard it was for them being young children. My daughter was 6. No, at this time it was 2009. So she was 8 and my son was 4 whenever I went to Iraq. So I know it was hard for me. I can't even imagine how hard it was for children, you know, to only be able to see their mom through a camera for a whole entire year. And the 2 weeks I seen them during that year definitely wasn't enough. But I knew in my heart and in my mind, no matter how hard it was and how much it just didn't make sense at that point, that I was doing the best that I could for my family. I was doing the best that I thought that I could to better our lives. And so I stuck it out. I came back from Iraq in 2010. And sorry, excuse me. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. My grandson was having a little problem. So, where was I at? Okay, so I knew that I was doing a very great thing for my family. I knew that I was doing what I thought was best to give us that future, that life that we wanted, right? And whenever I got out of the military, so before you get out of the military, they take you through these different classes and different things like that to be able to prepare yourself to get to living a civilian life. And whenever I was going through these classes and through these things that they would try to teach us and help us to know how to be a civilian again, in my mind, I'm thinking, I was a civilian for like 20 something years before I even went into the military. I was only in the Army for 4.5. So how hard can it really be getting out of the military? And little did I know that it was extremely hard, extremely hard. And I got out and I moved to a small town in Texas where my mom and my stepdad were living. And at first I was so excited. I was like, yes, I'm not in the military no more. I can spend time with my family. I can spend more time with my kids. I was really, truly, truly excited about it. And then I wasn't. It was like I went from having a life, like 4.5 years of literally being told pretty much what time I had to get up, because I had to be on the base at a certain time to be able to do the PT and everything. And then get out of that and go home, shower, go back to work. It was like, that's what I did every day. My life wasn't really that different. And so I spent 4.5 years like that, like doing the same repetitive thing pretty much every day. And then when I got out of the military, it was fun. And then it wasn't, because then I realized, like, okay, now what do I do with myself? Like, what do I do with myself? What am I supposed to do with my time? Like, nobody is telling me to, let's go to the range today. You got to do this paperwork. You got to do this. You got to train for chemical. Like, nobody was telling me what to do with myself. And so me having a past of addiction, that's where I went back to. That's where I went back to deal with the feelings that I was dealing with. I didn't know at that moment that I was dealing with PTSD. I just knew that I couldn't sleep. I just knew that my thoughts were going crazy. I was having these crazy, crazy dreams about being in war, about people trying to kill me. It was just crazy. And I didn't know what was going on. So I went back to drugs, something that was comfortable to me, something that made sense to me. And so I went back to the drugs, and the drug of choice then was meth. And I went back to it, and I dove head first into it. Like, I'm talking about like deep dive right into it. And I'm sorry, y'all, my nose is itching. Dove so deep into it. And I would shut myself in my room, and me and my sister were living together at the time. And I just, in that moment, I could not worry about being a mother. And that's really sad to say, but in that moment, I didn't know how to be a mother at that moment. I was trying to deal with how was I going to get out of the fact or get over the fact that I wasn't in the military yet and I didn't know what to do with my time? So I did drugs every day. I remember taking rides down the street just to be able to smoke the meth. And then I would come back and I would shut myself in my room for days and days and days. And I didn't deal with my children. I didn't. And now that breaks my heart because, I mean, how could I do that? How could I put those before my children? However, if you've never been in addiction and you've never dealt with that, maybe you don't understand it. But like addiction, like when you do the drugs that first time, it's your choice. That is your choice to do those drugs. Most of the time when people do drugs, it's their choice to do that drug, right? However, there's a point when you get to it and it's just no longer a choice anymore. It's just like you can't seem to fight past it. It's just that's your first thought in your mind is, let me go do this because that's all I know. Then and that's all I knew. That's the only thing I knew how to deal with my problems is that. I always knew who God was. However, I didn't know how to have that personal relationship with him. So instead of running to God, I ran to drugs. And that was my coping mechanism was drugs. And so I dove into the meth and I got really, really deep into it. When I first moved to that town, I had met a friend. Well, I thought he was my friend. So I met a guy, let's just say that. I met a guy who claimed to be my friend. Whenever he realized that I had a past addiction that had come creeping back in my life again, he then became not my friend, but my drug dealer. And whenever I had got to that point to where I couldn't function, my thoughts were only about myself, very selfish, and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that was the drugs, because that's how I was gonna shove down everything that I had been through in life, the domestic violence, the military, even though I loved the military and it definitely has set me up in a lot of ways, there's still things that I had to deal with mentally and even physically due to being in the military. So that was what I chose to shove that stuff down. So whenever he realized that that's what it was, whenever I left, because I just left where my kids were and I went to his house, and it was then that he was like, he tries to tell me, you know what, like, I know you're going through a lot and you really care about your kids, and I can help you. I'm like, you can help me with what? He was like, I can help you. I can help you get to that next level. I can help you be financially free. I can help you to where you don't ever have to depend on anybody else. And I'm thinking, what is this dude talking about? And he was like, well, just trust me. Do you trust me? And mind you, I had spent from probably the time I was a teenager up until not that many years ago, I had spent my life trying to find my worth in a man. So in my mind, I thought that, well, if a man doesn't think I'm pretty and good enough, or if he doesn't want to sleep with me, or if he doesn't think that I have something going for myself, then it's not true, right? So I tried to find my worth in the man. And so whenever he's telling me this, I was just like at that moment to where I was very gullible and very vulnerable and very, very easily manipulated. Because what was I doing? I was chasing after what a man thought about me. I had no idea at this moment to really have a relationship with God. Like, that seed was definitely planted in my life because I went to church when I was younger, but I didn't know how to have that personal relationship with God and how to like really seek his face, right? And so because I thought that my worth came from how a man felt about me and how a man looked at me, I believed everything they would tell me. It didn't matter if it seemed really stupid at that moment. I was like, well, I mean, he's got to know what he's talking about. He really truly cares about me. I didn't realize red flags were red flags. And so I believed what he said. I'm like, okay, well, you could probably help me get there. And I really truly cared and loved for my children. I loved them very, very much. And I wanted to do everything I possibly could to do everything I was able to do to help us get to be financially free and to get to be able to be a happy family. And so he was like, just trust me, and I'm going to get you there. And I'm like, okay. So he tells me that he's going to take me to this club, and you're going to dance in this club. You just wear a bikini. That's it. That's all you got to do is wear a bikini. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not that bad. Now, mind you, I was in a place to where I didn't even realize my own worth or my own dignity or my own anything. Like it wasn't there. And so he had me dance in a bikini bar, and then he was like, that's not really making that much money. He's like, that's not making that much money. So how about we just leave from there, and we're going to do something else. And I remember whenever, because I was at his house. By this time, I was always at his house. My kids were around the corner, and I literally just stayed at his house. I didn't even go to where my children were. And I just stayed with him the whole time. And so I remember asking him, because there was other family members that were living there. And I remember asking him, like, what are they doing? Because I remember the girl was like taking pictures and stuff. And he was like, oh, she's taking pictures. She does like some escort type stuff, just like going on dates with, men that want like pretty girls to go on dates with them. And I was like, oh, okay. And so whenever he realized, I guess, that the bikini bar wasn't making money like he wanted, he was like, well, we're going to do what she's doing. Like, I'm going to, take these pictures of you, and I'm going to put you on this website, and don't worry. It's nothing. It's just you going on a date with these men that want to, take a pretty girl on a date. And whenever you are like, your mind is just everywhere. Like you don't even really know how to think for yourself. Plus you're so deep down in drugs, on top of PTSD, on top of other things that you've had to deal with in your life. You don't know really how to think for yourself. You believe anything that anybody will say, especially if they're trying to tell you that they can help you get to that next level of being able to be free and be able to stand on your own and not have to ask nobody for anything. And at that moment, that's all I wanted. So I was like, okay, well, I can go on a few dates. Now, mind you, this whole time that this man was claiming to be my friend, he was grooming me. And if you don't know what grooming means, that means that he was just making me feel like he truly cared, making me feel like he could do everything that I ever needed in life, that he was the answer to my problems, that he could make it all go away. He could make everything perfectly, exactly the way I wanted it to be. He was grooming me. He was making me think that he was the answer to all of my problems. And so whenever it came to that point, and he tells me we're going to go to, I'm going to be an escort, right? So I thought I was going to go on some dates with some men to like these fancy dinner parties or, business parties or just different stuff like that. Well, after the first time that he took these pictures and he put me on Backpage, and if you don't know what Backpage is, I don't know if it's still there. I really honestly don't know. He put these pictures on Backpage, and Backpage was a website. It had a lot of different other things. However, it also was a place for men to put women's pictures on there and sell them for sex. And so he put my picture on there, and he, they would call and we would go through this whole thing or whatever. And I went on this, I don't even know what you want to call this call, right, with this customer. In all reality, he was a trick. He was a John. There's so many different names for men that buy sex from women. And so I went on a few of these calls, and I would like do everything in my power not to actually sleep with him, right? And then it got to the point to where Like I wasn't, and by the time, let me backtrack. By the time that it got to this point of him escorting me or having me escort, I wasn't right around the corner from my children. Like he would have me all over Livingston areas. Like, I mean, we were in Tyler, we were in Longview, we were in Houston, other places. And so I couldn't just leave. And at that, like I said, like it's so crazy when I think about it now, because I'm just like, or people have even asked me, like, Heather, you could have just left. I mean, yeah, I guess at some point I could have. However, I was so far deep down into the manipulation and to the everything that whenever I snapped and realized what was going on in my life and what was happening in my life, he already had me in California, because he was like, you know what, we're just going to go to California and we're going to go up there for a vacation. Because I told him, I was like, dude, what is this? Like, this is not what you told me it was. He was like, well, we're just going to take a break. We're going to go to California and we're going to go on vacation. And I was like, okay, great. He understood. He got that didn't really understand. And I guess he realized that I was starting to understand what was going on. I guess because it's like I was on the drugs, and then whenever he had me start doing that, he wouldn't let me do the drugs. He would only let me do them ever so often, if he realized that I was starting to realize what was going on. So I wasn't doing the drugs very much at this time. And whenever those drugs started wearing off and I started being able to really truly think about things, I started to realize, like, wait a minute, what is going on? Like, this man has literally got me out here doing this with people for money. Like, what is really going on? Whenever I started realizing that, he was like, you know what, let's just go to California. Let's go on a vacation. And he took me all the way to California. When we get to California, he has me dance at a nude strip club with some family of his. Like, I don't know who it was, but and so that was crazy all in itself. It truly, truly was. And then even in California, he was like, oh, you know, that's not making enough money. We're not going to do that. So he had me prostituting in California. And I told him, I was like, dude, I was like, this is not like, you got me all the way in California. I thought you understood that I was starting to realize that this is not what's about to happen. Like, I can't do this. This is not okay. You told me you were going to help me get financially stable. You told me you were going to help me get on my feet. You told me you were going to help me be able to be the mother that my kids needed to be in their life. And you lied to me. You lied to me. And you have me out here doing this and this and this. Like, I have a daughter. Like, I have family. I have my own dignity. Like, how dare you? And then you took me all the way to California to supposed to be on a vacation, and you got me out here doing the same thing. So I realized that he wasn't going to let me go. He had got mad at me several times and, you know, put his hands on me, beat me up. And I called my dad one day and I was like, Dad, I was like, I'm in California and I have to get out of here. He's like, what do you mean, baby? And I said, well, I couldn't tell my dad what was actually going on. I had to I was like, Dad, he's just making me do things that I don't want to do. So can you please help me get out of here? So my dad bought me a plane ticket. And the night before I was supposed to fly out, he had got mad at me because I was a second late of coming out of this person's room. And he beat me up. So the day that I was supposed to fly, I ended up missing my flight. And so whenever we got back home that night, in my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, I missed my flight. What am I going to do now? I'm not going to get away from this guy. I'm going to be stuck up here. So we get back to his family's house where we were staying at. And he was like, hey, you want to go get something to drink? And now looking back, I know that had to have been God putting that on his heart. You know what I'm saying? To be able to get me out of there. But he was like, hey, you want to go to the store and get something to drink? And I was like, Yes. In my mind, I was like, yes, that's it. That's it right there. I can get away. This is my way out. I can leave. And I jumped in the rental car that we had and I drove as fast as I could to the airport. And when I got to the airport, I found the first guard that I can find. And I was like, please help me. I'm not from here. I'm from Texas. I came up here with a guy that's up here making me do things that I don't want to do. Please get me out of here. He's going to find me. And they're like, no, just calm down. He's not going to find you. I was like, no, you don't understand. He's going to find me. Please help me. And so they put me in a room for hours and hours and asked me a bunch of questions. And like I told him, eventually he found me. My cell phone was with his cell phone. Like we were on the same plan. So he was able to find me. And by the grace of God, they put me on another flight. They didn't charge me for it. They just put me on another flight and sent me back to Texas. And he was trying to fly that day, but they didn't allow it. They didn't allow him to fly on my flight. They didn't allow him to fly on any flight. They were like, no, you're not going. You're not flying anywhere today. So I got back to Texas, and it was a few months after that, and he had my vehicle. And so I went to go get my vehicle, and I ended up right back up underneath him. And a lot of people are like, how does that even make sense? And I don't know. I can't tell you. I just know that sometimes when you get wrapped up in that and you get caught up in that, just like any type of man, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, all these types of things. I don't know exactly what he said to me, but I know that he pulled me right back in. And at this time, it was only a few months later. I don't know exactly how many months, but it was a few months later, and ended up taking a call. And I told him, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to take this call. Like, I don't feel good about this call. Like, don't make me go on this call. And he was like, you're going on this call, or I'm going to like beat you up, and I'm going to hurt you. Like, you're going on this call. So he made me get out and go into the hotel room. And I was in there 2 seconds. Like, I literally was taking off my shoes, and the cops busted in. And they arrested me in Louisiana. And I told the cop, I was like, no, you don't understand. Please, like, please just hear me out. Like, it's not what you think it is. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. And I was trying to cry out to this police officer, like, help me. Like, I need help. Like, this is not what you think. I'm not a prostitute. I'm literally being forced to do this. Like, please hear me out. And I didn't tell him any of that. All I said was, no, please listen to me. It's not what you think it is. And he literally told me, shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down, or you're going to get in more trouble than what you think you are. So I shut up and sat down. I shut down, and I literally said nothing. I was in jail for a week. I got bonded out by a bondsman who I thought was trying to help me. A friend of mine sent the money, a few days later to give to him. But whenever I got out, he bought me stuff, to kind of help me take a shower, put me in a room. Long story short, he was trying to make me do things too, or he was going to take me back to jail. So I got away from Louisiana and I came back to Texas. And that was whenever I actually finally got away from him. And I still didn't know any of that. Like, I didn't know that was even a thing. I didn't know that it even had a name or a title or anything. I didn't know any of that. I just thought that I didn't got myself into a position that I couldn't get out of at that moment. And I didn't know anything. I just thought that I allowed myself to get into this situation, and I allowed somebody to mess with my mind. I allowed somebody to manipulate me and to use me. And I didn't understand. I was very, very upset and mad at myself, embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? And I remember reading a Christine Caine. I don't know if y'all know who that is. She is a Christian author, and she's also the founder of A21, which is an anti-human trafficking organization. And I was reading one of her books, and she was defining what human trafficking was. And it was in that moment, I remember reading the definition of human trafficking and sitting there literally like with my mouth open, like, what in the world? Like, what in the world happened? Like, is that literally what I went through? Like, that's what that was? I truly did not understand. I was so confused in that moment. And then even after I knew what that was, I kept telling myself, but you stayed with him, but you did do this for a little while, but this and but that and but this, and I kept fighting those emotions in my brain over and over and over again. And it wasn't until probably 2020, whenever I had realized that I needed to heal. Now, like I told you, I always knew who God was, but I didn't really know him. I didn't seek his face. I wasn't running towards him like he was running towards me. I was running the opposite way. I was trying to figure it all out myself. I was trying to deal with everything that I'd ever dealt with in my life on my own. And so whenever I started to truly try to heal and deal with those problems, because I couldn't do it to my children anymore. My children dealt with us moving here and there and everywhere, that it was in that moment that I realized, like, you gotta heal from your past. You can't make excuses anymore. You can't run from what you've been through in your life. You have to heal. You need to heal. And so instead of trying to deal with it myself, I began to seek out God and what he said and who he said I was. And the more I did that, I realized that it wasn't my fault. I was a very vulnerable, and I was in a very rough spot mentally, and I was groomed. I was groomed and I was manipulated. And on top of the trafficking, on top of the domestic violence and all the things that I had experienced in life, I I wasn't in a good spot. I wasn't in a good place. And so I began to heal and realize that it was not my fault. All the things that I had experienced in life, all the things that I had dealt with in life were not my fault. It wasn't my fault. Did I put myself in some situations? Yeah. However, it wasn't my fault that those people chose to do the things they did to me. That was not my fault. And I began to heal. And whenever I healed, God began to I was seeking his face. I was seeking who he was and who he said I was, because for so long I believed everything that everybody else said I was. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't going to be good enough. Nobody was ever going to want me. Like, I'm not worth anything. Like, I believed those things and I wore them like a badge. I began to believe them myself, because whenever you're told something for so long, over and over and over and over and over again, you begin to believe that. And I did. I believed every single word anybody had ever told me, from my 10-year abusive relationship to the trafficking to all of it. Like, all the things that have been spoken over me, all the negative things in my life that have been spoken over me, I believed them. However, when I started seeking God out and he started telling me that I was loved and I was wonderfully and fearfully made, that I was purposed, that I was blessed, that I was enough, that I was created for a reason, I realized that I'm worthy. Like, I'm enough. I am everything that God wanted me to be. I still didn't understand why I had to go through the things that I had to go through in life. Why did I have to deal with that abusive relationship? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to get beat up like that? Why did I have to do that? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to go through the trafficking? Why was that something that I had to experience? I started fighting those feelings and having to deal with those things. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. I knew that God loved me. I knew that he loved me, and I knew that he was going to protect me and look out for me and always be there for me. I just didn't understand. And I remember I was in a coaching class, and that coaching program really, truly, truly helped me a whole lot in my healing. It helped me forgive. It helped me to look at things in a godly perspective instead of my own perspective. And I remember a friend of mine, she had quoted or she had mentioned Genesis 50:20, and now it's one of my favorite scriptures. And Genesis 50:20 says, "Ye meant it for evil, but God intended it for good, for what is being done now, the saving of many lives." And whenever I read that, it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So that's what it was for. I had to experience everything that I'd ever experienced in my life because I was going to get here one day, where I'm at and where I'm going. So that way I could reach back and pull people up. Because what the devil thought that was going to take me out, God has used that for me to be able to sit here and have this podcast and have a ministry and all of these things that I do to be able to help other women realize that they walk in authority. Because all the things that I'd ever went through in my life, for the longest time, I thought that it disqualified me. I wasn't good enough for that job. I wasn't good enough for that. I wasn't good enough for this. I wasn't good enough for anything, is what I thought. But then I realized that instead of disqualifying me, it qualified me. It gave me authority. I have authority. You have authority, my friend. Everything that you've been through in your life gave you authority. It didn't disqualify you. It gave you the authority to stand tall and reach back and pull somebody else up. And whenever I started realizing that, it's like I knew. I was like, wait, like Heather is a pretty awesome person. My worth isn't found in a man. Who cares what a man thinks about me? Who cares what anybody thinks about me? Because my God in heaven, my Savior, the one who walked in the fire with me, the one who brought me through all of that, he says that he created me to be exactly who I am and to be exactly where I am right now. And whenever I realized that, you couldn't tell me any different. You couldn't tell me any different. You can't look at me today and tell me that I'm not worthy and that I'm not good enough. I mean, you can try, but it's not going to affect me because I know who I am. I know who God created me to be. But it took that healing. I had to go through that healing. I had to heal. I had to heal. Because society and everybody else makes you think, or like, you can't talk about that's embarrassing, or you can't talk about that. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody cares. And see, that's a lie. That is a lie from the pits of hell. That's a lie. That is why I do Testimony Thursdays, is because so many people need to hear the things that we have went through in life. If you knew me back then and to see me now, it's completely different. Have I arrived? No, because nobody ever arrives. We're continuously growing, continuously growing. However, I am definitely not like I used to be. Thank God for his grace and mercy. I don't have to try to find my worth in a man anymore. I don't have to second guess who I am or what I was placed on this earth for. Whenever I realized that, that's whenever I started taking the necessary steps to get to the next place in my life, to get to the next season in my life. And that's been even harder than what it was before. But that's just because the devil knows who I am and he knows who you are. And he don't want us to realize that. He don't want us to walk in our calling. He don't want us to walk in our purpose. However, he has no authority. I have more authority and you have more authority than Satan does. That's why he's so mad. Whenever I realized that, I started seeking out that purpose. How can I walk in that purpose? What can I do? What does God place me here for? I knew that I was worthy and I knew that I was enough, but I didn't know what it was that God put me here, exactly what he put me here to do. And hi, Tina, I love you too. And I healed right? I had to go through that healing so that way I could look at my past, not to dwell on it and to say, oh, poor pitiful me, or Lord, this is what, you know what I mean? Not to make excuses for actions, but I had to be able to look at my past in a godly perspective. I had to be able to look at it and see, what was the purpose in that, Lord? What was the reason for all that? If I hadn't been through domestic violence, if I hadn't been through addiction, if I hadn't been through sex trafficking, could I really truly sit here and talk to other women and help them overcome it? I mean, sure, I could try. But I know for myself, if I am trying to talk to somebody about something that I've been through, I can relate and feel more comfortable with somebody who has been through the things that I'm trying to talk to them about. So I had to go through all of that so I could advocate for people who were trying to overcome domestic violence and addiction and sex trafficking. If I wouldn't have been able to overcome that, or if I wouldn't have went through that, how could I have started a ministry that is going to help women overcome and walk and seek out their identity in Christ? It would have been pretty hard. Pretty hard. You know, it was several years ago when I had lost a very, very dear friend of mine, and God gave me a vision to open a women's home. And I was like, Lord, that's crazy, because I never been in a women's home. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I just sat on it and sat on it and sat on it. And even like last year, I had done a fundraiser for it. And it didn't quite go as what I thought it would. But I didn't know at that moment that I had put myself in it. I put myself in it. Because I had been such a failure in my mind, I thought, for so long in my life, that it was about me and what I was going to do and what I was going to accomplish. And then God had to show me, like, it's not about you. It's not about me, and it's not even about you. It's about the people that were placed on this earth to help. And when I realized that, I stepped out of my own way. I stepped out of my own way, and I allowed God to bring me through things. I allowed him to mold me and stretch me and prune me into who he needed me to be able to do the things that he's called me to do. We have to trust his timing and trust his way. Not our way, but his way. And so if there's something that God has maybe laid on your heart, and you know that he told you to do this, take the time to seek out his way. Take the time to listen to how he says to do it and what he says to do. Because if you try to do it yourself and you try to do it your way and on your timing, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And maybe it will for a minute, but it won't last for long, I don't think. And so I kind of went through all of that because I want to encourage you that no matter what your life looks like, no matter what your story looks like, I mean, it's even hard for me to get my story out sometimes, because in my mind, sometimes I can think like, man, what do people think about me now that I said that? However, I truly don't care. And I don't say that to be rude or to be mean. However, I truly don't care what people think about me when they hear my story, because I know that somebody in this world somewhere that will listen to this one day needs to hear exactly what I have to say. And the same is for you. But I want to encourage you that no matter what your story looks like, no matter what your testimony is, that you need to heal. You've got to heal. You've got to learn. You've got to feel those feels, right? I know society and people will make you think that you get to shove that stuff under the rug. Just shove it under there and let's not deal with it. But that's not that's not going to get you anywhere. That's going to get you deeper and deeper and deeper into that trench. And that's not where you want to be. I know that's not where you want to be. You want to be out of that trench. And in order to get out of that trench, you got to feel those feels. You got to feel those emotions. You got to deal with it. You got to forgive people. And I get it. Like, people have done some pretty messed up stuff to you. I understand. But see, forgiveness is not for that person. It's for yourself. Because whenever you don't forgive somebody, they have a hold on you. They have a strong hold on you. And they don't get to do that. Your past does not get to own you anymore. It doesn't get to own you anymore. So you get to deal with those feelings. You get to fight those feelings. And you get to heal from it. Because you are worthy and you are enough. And no matter what anybody has ever told you in your life, you matter. God placed you here on this earth for a reason. I don't know what that is. And maybe you don't know what that is yet. And that's okay. Continue to seek his face. Continue to run towards God, your creator, your savior. And he will tell you what that is. He will reveal that to you. I used to think that I was not good enough, that I was never going to be anything. And after walking with Christ and chasing him and seeking his face and truly only caring about his opinion of me and what he thinks of me, and we know he loves us unconditionally regardless. But after doing that, then I can truly deal with life differently. I can deal with life differently. I don't have to fight this battle alone, and you don't have to fight this battle alone either. So I hope that by me telling my story and talking to you tonight, that you realized that you matter and that you have authority. You walk in authority. Seek his face. Ask him, Lord, what do you want me to do? Why did you put me on this earth? Because now I know that I know that I know that I know who I am and how amazing I am and how awesome I am and how blessed you are to have Heather in your life. And I'm not saying that because I'm conceited or that I toot my own horn or however you want to say it. I say that because it's the truth. And people are just as blessed to have you in their life. You got to love yourself. You got to know how awesome and how worthy that you are. You have to know that. Because you are. And so no matter the storm or the situation that you're in right now, give it to God. Place it at his feet. And let him deal with that. Because when you do that, it makes things a lot easier. God loves you, and no matter how many times you fall, he's going to be there to help pick you back up. You can do this. I know life is hard, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense. A lot of times it doesn't make sense, right? But God loves you, and he's got you. You know, going from somebody who doesn't really know who she is and where she's going in life to being in a position in her life to where I'm actually where I prayed to be. I have an amazing job with an amazing boss and amazing coworkers. I'm such in awe of God right now with all he's doing in my life. You know, y'all heard me talking about Miranda's Place. You know, Miranda's Place it's going to be a women's home for women that have dealt with domestic violence and trafficking and addiction. And I never thought that I would ever get there. I mean, the vision crossed my mind. You know, God gave me that vision because it's his vision, right? He gave it to me, but I never thought I would actually be there or at a point in my life where I can actually try to move forward with it. And here I am. God is doing things in my life and in the ministry that I have, which is Miranda's Place. And there's big things coming. There's great things coming. I can actually sit here and say, I love my life. I actually love my life. I didn't think I would ever say that. I didn't think those words would ever come out of my mouth. But I do. And it's awesome. It feels so good to say that I love my life. So I encourage you to keep on keeping on. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep seeking God's face. Keep seeking his face. If you don't have people in your life that uplift you and encourage you and motivate you and believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, pray and ask God to place those women in your life or those people in your life. It makes a difference. It really, truly makes a difference. It's important to have equally yoked people in your life. Equally yoked doesn't mean just in a romantic type relationship. It means in all types of relationship in your life. You need to be equally yoked. It's important. It's important to be around like-minded people. I love you guys so much. And I kind of felt like I was doing a lot of rambling. However, I hope that this encouraged somebody tonight. I love y'all so much. And just know that if you are wanting to share your testimony, if God has been putting it on your heart to share your testimony, reach out to me. I would love to have you on this show. I would love to interview you and see what God has done in your life, because somebody needs to hear your story. Somebody needs to hear what God has done in your life. They need to hear the goodness of God. They need to hear where you were at to where you are now, where he brought you from. So if that's you and you know it's you, even if it's scary and you feel like you're going to throw up, then that means I'm talking to you. So if that's you, please reach out to me. I would love to have you on this show. I pray that y'all have an amazing night. I pray that you remember that you are enough, you are worthy, and that you walk in authority. God bless you, and I pray y'all have an amazing night. Bye-bye.